You just obliterated the wrong man's sanctuary. That's what should have been running through my head the night I watched a sleek, black electric car figure eights into a decade of my life. But all I could do was stand at my window, 2 in the morning, and watch the smoke rise. The smell of scorched fescue drifted through the screen, a disgusting, acrid stench of something precious being casually annihilated. My hands didn't shake. My jaw didn't clench. I just watched, calculated, and began planning, because here's the thing those entitled trust fund brats and their HOA queen mothers don't get. Some people you dismiss aren't weak. They're just patient. The sound that pulled me from sleep was like a rusty knife dragging across glass. Not inherently loud, but the kind of disturbance that trips every alarm in your brain before you're fully conscious. I checked the clock, 2:17 a.m. Then I heard it clearly, the high-pitched whine of high-performance tires losing traction, followed by bass-heavy music and the whooping laughter of kids who'd never had to earn anything. Down on my perfectly manicured front lawn, the one I'd spent 10 years perfecting, months of meticulous care to heal. A house is structure and property value. A home, especially for someone like me, Jared Chun, 42, an immigrant kid who came here at 12 and built a successful security firm from the ground up. A home is the physical representation of every compromise, every extra hour, every time I had to politely smile when someone asked, "But where are you really from?" And this entitled kid, Colton Ashworth, son of the neighborhood's undisputed queen bee, Veronica Ashworth, had just treated my history like a racetrack. I went straight to my office, pulled up the 4K perimeter footage, and saved everything. Cloud, local drive, and a labeled USB, because I don't just design security systems for corporate clients. I understand evidence, threat assessment, and response escalation. I started the process the right way, the civil way. By 10 a.m., I was standing on Veronica Ashworth's ridiculously columned porch, holding a manila folder filled with printed screenshots. The house was a monument to old money and questionable taste. A sprawling place with a circular driveway wrapping around a fountain that definitely violated the HOA's drought guidelines. But hey, rules are flexible when you help write them. The black Zeus, still gleaming despite its joyride, was parked right out front. Veronica, all perfect blonde highlights, and designer athleisure that probably cost more than my first car, opened the door. The moment she saw me, I saw the flicker, that icy, split-second calculation of whether to engage or dismiss. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone suggesting she was far too important to be bothered. I introduced myself and professionally explained the incident, presenting the first photo. A clear shot of her son mid-donut on my lawn, license plate visible, followed by the infrared image of his face behind the wheel. She barely glanced at it before offering the classic defense. "I'm sure you're mistaken. Colton wouldn't do anything like that." I pointed out the custom plate, Rich KD, and then pointed to the unmistakable face of her son. I watched her recognize both. Her expression hardened instantly. "It's just grass," she said, a dismissive wave of her hand, trying to erase 10 years of my effort. "It grows back." I kept my voice flat, factual, explaining the $1,500 cost in immediate repairs, the damaged irrigation, and the months of necessary resodding. I requested compensation and a commitment that it wouldn't happen again. That's when the condescension really kicked in. "Mr. Chun, honestly, some people just turn small issues into drama. Accidents happen, and frankly, you're being overly sensitive." She didn't have to finish the thought. We both knew exactly which people she meant. Before I could respond, Colton himself thundered down the marble staircase, wearing that look of casual entitlement, the hero waiting for applause. His mother gestured vaguely at me. "The neighbor is here about some complaint involving the lawn." "Some complaint?" Colton's face broke into a grin. "Oh yeah, that was last night. Just having fun, bro, chill out." When I showed him the gouges and the ruined earth, his smirk never wavered. He shrugged. "So what? You gonna sue me?" The question was posed like a joke, a challenge he knew I couldn't meet. His mother stepped in, agreeing that I was overreacting to a minor incident. I corrected her. This wasn't an accident. This was vandalism filmed for entertainment. That's when Colton delivered the line that vaporized the last shred of my patience. He laughed, looking me straight in the eye. Maybe you should go back to where you came from if you don't like it here. Veronica didn't flinch, didn't apologize, didn't even blink. She just watched me with that cold assessment, waiting for me to lose control. I felt something inside me snap, cleanly, but I didn't raise my voice. I simply told them, without a flicker of anger, that I would be pursuing this through proper legal channels. As I walked away, I heard Veronica call out, dripping with mockery, "Good luck with that, Mr. Chun." And Colton laughed. That laughter, that's what sent me back to my office. Not angry, but cold. I opened my legal research, building a framework. Criminal mischief becomes a felony at $2,000 damage in our state. Harassment requires a documented pattern. Trespassing with malicious intent. Check. I realized the system wasn't built to protect people like me from people like them. It moved too slowly, prioritizing other threats. A rich kid doing donuts didn't rank. My formal complaint to the HOA was rerouted, naturally, right back to Veronica. 3 days later, I called the HOA office and heard her voice answer, professionally detached. "It's under review. We'll need 3 to 4 weeks." I asked about the glaring conflict of interest. She suggested, icily, that if I had concerns about HOA procedures, I was welcome to raise them at the next general meeting in 6 weeks. Then, 2 nights later, at 11:30 p.m., the sound was back. But this time it was worse. The black Zeus, accompanied by 2 other vehicles, was doing loops in the cul-de-sac. Then, Colton broke away and headed straight for my house, deliberately targeting the intact section of my lawn, executing 2 more reckless donuts, fresh destruction layered over the old. This wasn't fun anymore. It was calculated malice. I watched the live feed on my laptop, the windows down, Colton grinning, filming his encore. It was a statement. I called the non-emergency line again, emphasizing the repeat offense, the escalating harassment. But as I surveyed the new damage, my lawn now universally scarred, the total cost easily exceeding $2,500. I knew the truth. Police reports, HOA complaints, civil suits. They all move at a pace measured in months, not minutes. Colton would strike again long before the system could react. I needed leverage. I needed something that would force action now. I opened a new document, labeled it Phase 3, and started sketching. If the law wouldn't protect me, I would protect myself, legally, carefully, completely. My attorney, a sharp guy named Marcus, looked skeptical when I asked about property modifications, not civil suits. I laid out the plan. The felony damage threshold, the clear pattern of harassment, and the right of a property owner to protect their land. He confirmed it. Speed bumps are entirely legal on private driveways, provided I use proper warning signs. He gave me the exact county ordinance codes. He finished with a look I'll never forget. If you install safety features and clearly mark them with appropriate warnings, anyone who chooses to ignore those warnings and gets injured has only themselves to blame. That was the permission I needed. I called my friend Leo, a structural engineer, and invited him over. I didn't mince words. I needed a dual-purpose speed bump system, standard traffic calming for normal use, but with an anti-vandalism feature activated only by high-speed, aggressive entry. My rough sketches showed a 6-inch industrial rubber bump, internal steel frame, pressure sensors, and retractable steel spikes. Leo, intrigued by the sheer audacity of the engineering, refined the specs. A trigger threshold of 800 psi, well above normal driving, and a deployment time of 0.18 seconds using a concealed hydraulic mechanism. 2 inches of tempered steel, enough to shred a tire, not enough to kill a driver. The key, he stressed, was the warning system. Everything had to be documented, legal, and signaled. I immediately ordered 3 industrial-grade, reflective signs. The first at the street, private property, no trespassing. The second, 20 feet in, speed bump ahead, slow down. The third, right before the bump location, caution, speed control device. I installed them myself, documenting the GPS coordinates, height, and visibility of every sign. 3 chances to make the right choice. I even emailed the HOA, an intentional CYA move, notifying them of the legal speed bump installation. Veronica replied, "Not about legality, but aesthetics. It's visually inconsistent with neighborhood standards." Perfect. She'd acknowledged it. 10 nights later, Leo and I worked until dawn. We cut the asphalt, dug the trench, and installed the sensors and the complex hydraulic spike assembly. The final product looked perfectly benign, a standard black rubber bump with yellow stripes. But beneath the surface, Leo armed the control box. "It does nothing," he said, "unless they choose to violate those 3 signs and violate physics itself." Then came the waiting. 3 weeks of quiet. I started to wonder if I'd built an elaborate solution to a resolved problem. Then, at 1:15 a.m. on a Friday, the roaring was back. Louder, more careless. I pulled up the 6 camera feeds simultaneously. Colton and 2 other cars at the end of. Imposed 0 risk to anyone who respected the law. It only activated when someone chose to trespass repeatedly and drive at dangerous speeds. The president of the HOA, seeing the writing on the wall, called for Veronica's immediate resignation due to gross conflict of interest. 35 hands went up. She grabbed her bag and walked out, defeated without a word. 2 months later, the $12,000 civil settlement paid for my new, perfect lawn and irrigation system. Colton pled guilty to felony criminal mischief, served community service, and was hit with a 3-year, 300-foot restraining order. I deactivated the spike system, filling the cavities with solid rubber. It's just a standard speed bump now, a quiet, ordinary speed bump, but its presence tells a story. I sit on my porch now, drinking coffee, watching my perfect lawn. The Kingsley house has a for sale sign out front. My neighbors, once distant, now wave, nod, and tell me they're grateful someone finally stood up. Justice didn't arrive with a thunderclap or a dramatic courtroom victory. It arrived through patience, documentation, and the precise application of engineering and law. I didn't seek revenge. I built a consequence. And that, I realized, is a far more satisfying kind of power. So what do you think? In a community where power and entitlement dictate the rules, did I go too far to protect my home? Or was this the only way to prove that consequences, when delivered precisely, apply to everyone equally? Let me know in the comments below.